I'm gonna have a massive poop attack from this.
Unlike the wars of previous eras, modern wars are rarely decided with one battle, and even when there is a battle that changed the fortunes of the belligerents, it is often longer in duration and less decisive in its nature. Still,
I know one of my grandpas might have been in Stalingrad. He died, I don't know, I just know he died in Odessa. On the retreat. As they were retreating, he got fucked in Odessa, which would kind of mean he was in the south, right?
The keen observer will find the key battles in any conflict, and Stalingrad was one of those for the Second World War. This battle raged on for 6 months and was one of the bloodiest.
Imagine surviving Stalingrad, man. You're a lucky dude.
After sweeping through Poland in a month, through Norway in 2 months, and through the Low Countries and France in 6 weeks, continental Europe was in the confident grip of Nazi Germany. This enabled Hitler to concentrate on the USSR.
Look at Macaulay Culkin.
In 1941, the offensive against the Soviet Union allowed Germany to capture Belarus, Ukraine, Baltic countries and other territories, and besiege Moscow and Leningrad.
Isn't it crazy how far they have gotten?
Nevertheless,
still not even
Operation Barbarossa failed to defeat the Soviets in one single campaign, despite heavy losses taken by the Red Army. The main target of the German offensive in 1942 was Stalingrad and the oil reserves in the Caucasus. Hitler believed that destroying the industrial capacity of Stalingrad, capturing the main oil reserves of the Soviet Union, and taking control of the Volga, which had key importance for transportation within the country, would prove to be a decisive blow against the Soviets.
Shut up, you.
Also, Stalingrad obviously carried a symbolic importance for both sides by virtue of being named after Stalin. This offensive was codenamed Fall Blau, Case Blue. The German army concentrated in eastern Ukraine was divided into 2. Army Group A, under command of Wilhelm List, with the 17th Army and the 1st Panzer Army, was ordered to march southwards towards the oil fields of the Caucasus. Army Group B, consisting of the 6th German Army and 4th Panzer Army, 2 Romanian armies, 1 Italian and 1 Hungarian army, was to secure control of the Volga and Stalingrad.
What an irony that now Russia's invading Ukraine.
It was commanded by Field Marshal Fedor von Bock. On the Soviet side, Marshal Yeremenko was appointed as commander of the Southeastern Front and was ordered to plan the defense of Stalingrad together with Commissar Khrushchev. The 62nd Army was created for the purpose of defending Stalingrad under the command of Lieutenant General Vasily Choykov. Operation Fall Blau was planned for late May 1942, but was delayed due to the Second Battle of Kharkov and the Siege of Sevastopol. Ultimately, the Germans succeeded, but lost time and were...
Yeah, like right here, one of my great-grandpas died. I always wonder how that... And I don't mean that as a celebration, right? I just scientifically wonder how must that have felt like, being part of this. And I'm not trying to sound like one of these crazy, oh, I would love to be part of this. No, this must have been horrifying and crazy. I think it's a mix. I think what happened, I don't know. I think what happened is that the Germans, the basic soldier, right, basic dudes, they were so indoctrinated by success and by the Nazis that they thought easy peasy. This is going to be easy. And then real life knocked at their door and they got shit on. I think that's what happened. So I feel like in the beginning they were really motivated and easy peasy, ha ha ha. And then winter happened and shit happened and then they realized,
to start the operation in late June. By August 20th, German armies crossed the River Don and were at the doorstep of Stalingrad. Before the armies engaged in Stalingrad, the Soviet leadership ordered a shipment of grain and cattle to be removed from the city, but the civilian population of 400,000 was ordered to stay put.
What?
Initially, the Axis forces had 270,000 troops, 500 tanks, 600 aircraft, and 3,000 artillery pieces.
I literally have 600 aircrafts in Hoi 4 right now.
Against 190,000 troops, 400 tanks, 300 aircraft, and 2,200 artillery pieces commanded by the Soviets in Stalingrad. The Battle of Stalingrad started with...
He left the civilians there so the soldiers will fight harder to protect them. Oh shit, that's almost a little bit Evil genius, man. Fuck. Thank you, Onji.
Heavy bombing of the city by the most powerful air formation of the time, Luftwaffe.
Well, like, imagine, because I once read a book about this, the daily life in Stalingrad. Imagine what the daily life was like. Like, you take house by house and you hear news, what happened, and you're looking for cigarettes and food, and the winter fucks you.
The air raid by the Germans on August 23rd led to the deaths of hundreds of civilians, the destruction of all wooden construction in the city, and a firestorm. Early on, the Luftwaffe gained complete control over the air around Stalingrad, with the Soviets losing 201 aircraft in a mere 8 days. Despite the German advantage in the air and on the ground,
I mean, every time I listen to these documentaries about the German army in World War II, they sounded so successful, right? And it doesn't make me wonder that they thought they're unbeatable. They must have really thought we're untouchable, because so many successes.
Soviets were putting up inspired resistance, with the female and underage population of Stalingrad building fortifications and trenches.
This is what I'm playing right now.
This resistance did not stop German Army Group B reaching the north and south of Stalingrad by early September. A massive counter-offensive by the Soviet 24th and 66th Armies against the 14th Panzer Corps was defeated with help from the Luftwaffe. The Soviets lost 30 tanks in this failed offensive.
And I always think, I gotta give a shout out to Russians, you must be so proud of this shit as Russians. If I imagine I was Russian, I would hail these heroes, man. These people have saved your nation, man. These soldiers have protected you from certain death by the most evil motherfuckers the world has ever seen, man. You have to be so proud of these people, man. They looked into the maw of death to protect this country, man.
Fate awaited the September 18th counter-offensive, with the Luftwaffe destroying more than 40 Soviet tanks. By September 12th, the Soviet forces fell back into the city, and a fierce battle for each building and house started.
Millions and millions.
Stalin's Order 227 made unauthorized retreat be
the whole road showed? Yeah, dude, I am a German, and I can openly say I'm proud of these Russian soldiers, what they did. But, on the other hand, it is sad to see that a country where people died for freedom against the Nazis is nowadays oppressed by Mr. Dictator Putin, man. And they're so indoctrinated and so propaganda that they think Putin is good because they were raised like this shit, man.
Cause for military tribunal. There was a not a step back attitude, and thousands of deserters were being executed. These were among the factors strengthening the Stalingrad defenders' will to resist even more. But historians argue that it would be wrong to explain the will to fight by coercion. A large number of volunteers, especially female volunteer fighters, snipers and nurses, is good evidence of that. Reinforcements were constantly arriving from the other side of the Volga. Strategic reserves from the Moscow area and aircraft from across the country.
What a sight it must have been. Dude, imagine like in Call of Duty, you stand on this side and you watch the river, man. The sight, it must have been
transferred to the Stalingrad area. Stalingrad's defenders were fighting for each lost position in an attempt to regain it as soon as possible. The Stalingrad railway station changing hands 14 times within 6 hours is a perfect example of this. The skirmishes within the city are very hard to describe, as they were extremely chaotic, slow, and...
What I would be interested in is, and it probably exists, you guys are going to probably tell me, a book where a Russian or German soldier just tells us of his daily life. Nothing like, oh, here's a book about the general. No, a basic soldier just telling us what his life was like.
And indecisive.
That would be interesting, man.
The Germans first took control over the heights around the city, called Mamayev Kurgan and Lisaya Kura.
There's a lot of that.
Remarkably, 3 Soviet factories producing iron, tractors and T-34 tanks continued their production long into the German offensive. The fighting focused around these 3 objectives for months, until the Germans mostly took control of them in late October and stopped them from producing goods. The Soviets did their best to close in with the Germans in order to prevent the latter from using artillery. Another factor in the city battle was the use of snipers.
Documentary.
The Germans
If you remind me one day, chat, we can watch these documentaries if you want. I don't mind. I want to sometimes do a bit reaction stuff for chill stuff. We can watch a
more experienced snipers.
Not today.
But the Soviets were learning on the go, and one of the most famous Soviet snipers, Vasily Zaitsev, participated in the battle, killing more than 200 enemies, including 10 snipers.
That's a fucking KD,
Zaitsev managed to train more than 3 dozen snipers while the battle was raging on. This group constantly targeted German officers, which became a major issue for the commander of the German 6th Army, Paulus. By the end of October 1942, the German army was in control of 90% of Stalingrad and reached the bank of the Volga.
Crazy, right? And
the total air superiority of the Germans was one of the decisive factors in this initial success. From the 16th to the 25th of September, the Luftwaffe carried out up to 10,000 flying missions, while the Soviet Air Force carried out slightly more than 11,000 between July 17th and November 19th. The onset of winter and intense resistance by the Soviets halted further German advances. One of the major weaknesses of the Germans was a very thin front line in Stalingrad, the flanks of which were protected by troops from German allies and satellites. These men were less...
This has to be a meme template, man. This right here has to be a meme template, man.
Motivated.
Look at these monkeys.
In arms and were less prepared.
Again, there's always some people that think I'm offensive. It's good that we lost, okay? Just militarily speaking.
Than the Germans.
Good job, you monkeys.
Calls for reinforcements were ignored. As a result, in some areas, stretches of 1 to 2 kilometers were protected by just 20 to 30 soldiers. There was so much focus on Stalingrad that the Germans neglected the consolidation of positions behind it. Requests by Paulus to fall back and consolidate positions behind the River Don were rejected. The symbolic importance...
It so often felt like that, I'm not an expert, you guys are obviously the experts, you wearable fucks, but that if Hitler would have let these generals do what they wanted, it would have looked much better for them.
Stalingrad was too high for Hitler, and a withdrawal would be a serious blow to Nazi propaganda. By late autumn, Soviet generals Zhukov and Vasilevsky concentrated almost 800,000 men in the Stalingrad area in preparation for a counter-offensive. Operation Uranus started on the 19th of November 1942 with an attack by 3 armies under the command of General Vatertin.
Not actually that true.
The operation aimed to break through the thin German lines on 2 sides.
No one has said, oh my god, I can never talk to you guys. No one said Germany would have won. No, I just said it looks like if Hitler would have listened to his generals a bit more, it would have looked a bit better. But instantly, you idiots in chat, you complete degenerates. Tommy, that's neo-Nazi propaganda. They couldn't have won. No one said that. No one said that. You are why the world is so wrong nowadays.
And later merged these forces to achieve the encirclement of the German troops. The Soviet troops achieved this aim after 4 days on November 23rd. The 6th German Army, comprising of 265,000 personnel, was encircled by the Soviets.
What if the mod has a thing where later enemies spawn right here and encircle me? Don't spoil, but what if?
Despite the desperate situation of the 6th Army, Army Group A continued its operations in the Caucasus until December 19th. Soon it was in retreat and in no position to help the 6th Army. Army Group Don, comprised of 22 divisions, was formed under the command of Field Marshal Manstein to help out the 6th Army. Manstein convinced Hitler to not order the 6th Army to break out from encirclement, assuring him that Army Group Don would be able to save them if the Luftwaffe succeeded in supplying the 6th Army by air. Head of the Luftwaffe, Göring, believed that this would be possible. This tactic proved to be disastrous, since the Luftwaffe did not have the capacity to supply a huge army, including the core of the 4th Panzer Army, which needed constant fuel for operation. Also, the Soviet army targeted the air bases closest to Stalingrad, from which the supply flights were being made.
Outplayed, man.
This decreased supplies for the encircled 6th Army even further. The German offensive to save the 6th Army from encirclement came as close as 48 kilometers from the 6th Army, but eventually failed as well, also partly due to the inaction of the 6th Army. The situation was exacerbated by malnourishment among the German troops due to lack of supplies. Surrender was the only option for the 6th Army, but German High Command ordered them to resist as long as possible in an attempt to draw the attention of the Soviet armies to Stalingrad. Hitler's last gasp attempt to prevent these...
I'm always so impressed how many little clocks are into this big work of war, right? So many things have to come together,
the 6th Army
and logistics and
was made
organization.
on the 30th of January 1943, when he promoted General Paulus to the rank of Field Marshal, in the hope that Paulus would not want to go down as the first surrendered Field Marshal in German military history. But malnourishment, lack of ammunition, functional artillery and tanks led to the surrender of the 6th Army on February 2nd, 1943.
It still took 2 years though to
Stalingrad was the first major defeat for Nazi Germany in Europe in the Second World War. It forced the Nazi leadership to call the German public to so-called total war, in which all the resources of the nation would be employed for ultimate military success. This would all prove to be in vain, as the Soviet forces were gaining momentum on the Eastern Front, and the British army was defeating the Germans in North Africa and preparing for landings in Italy together with its allies.
And you're watching Twitch all day. You want to talk about being powerful?
Thank you for watching our video.
Interesting stuff.